Okay, so this video is very long overdue, but it is going to be my in-depth video review for the Sony Walkman NW-A55. So I got this back at the beginning of November, so I've had about 2 months to really play with this thing and put it through its paces. So I wanted to kind of give a more in-depth review. And this particular episode is going to be brought to you by Marshall Brewing Company, This Land Lager. They are based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, so the brewery is actually basically right across the street from where I work. So there's that. Not bad at all. So I guess we'll go ahead and jump into this. You've all already seen the unboxing video. I'll leave a link for that so you can check that out if you haven't. But I just kind of gave a rough overview of it. So I've had about, as I said, 2 months to really put this thing through its paces. And so I guess we can kind of give a much balanced review. First of all, talk about the things I like. I really like the buttons along the edge here. They just gave it a really, really nice touch. And it's really nice whenever I'm driving. I have it just sitting, up in the thing to be able to just reach in there and just feel where the play button is, to be able to pause it if I need to, or if I can, while I'm driving, I can just skip along songs, because basically I predominantly just listen to albums. So if it's like, oh, it's an interlude, I want to hear this or something like that, I can just reach up and tap the next button, skips to the next song, so it's nice. And it's also nice having the volume rocker on the side, so I can just reach up and hit that, because with the iPod, I had to kind of, do one of these numbers while I'm driving. So it's nice to have the buttons. It's also nice that we have a lock button, so I can just simply lock it if I don't want to access any of the buttons, or I can unlock it as well. So I really like the physical buttons on the outside. So looking at the menu here, basically all I have on here is artist, album, and genre. That's all I care about, so that's all I access. Predominantly how I access my albums is I'll go to genre, and then I'll scroll to what I'm looking for. Say, for instance, I want to listen to Starflyer. I'll go to indie rock. I'll go to the bottom and grab Starflyer. And then we have the entire Starflyer discography here. I can listen to The Last Laurel if I want. Go ahead and hit play, and we're playing The Last Laurel. So for those of you who are not power users, that's how I recommend doing it. If you predominantly listen to albums, and if you have a very large band selection, doing it by genre is so much easier. I mean, look, say for instance, I'm like, I want to listen to MXPX. So I just go to pop punk, and then I go down to MXPX, and there we go. We're already there. So for those of you who have a large artist list and you're going through artists, and you got to kind of scroll around. Okay, say for instance, I want to go to M, and then we got to kind of fine tune it. Oh, there it is. We can go there. It's all right. It's much easier with the Walkman to do that. Granted, I will give you that. So we can go to, Crux right there. It's there. So it's much easier on the Walkman. On the iPod, it was dreadful. So I started doing it by genre on the iPod because it was just so much quicker with the scroll wheel to get there by breaking it down the genre. So took a lot of that out. And, we can go to album, and we can also scroll the albums. When it comes to discographies, I like to put my discographies in chronological order. So like, say for instance, I have Living Sacrifice, Madonna, Joy Electric, Pantera, Madness, Petra, Beatles, MXPX, Ramones, Newsboys, Death, Screeching Weasel, Possessed, things like that. For bands I have like a decent discography for, I have it broken down by chronological order of their discography. So just to kind of show an example of that, we can go to, we'll go to Classic Punk. So if we go to Ramones, see here I have Ramones, Leave Home, Rocket Russia, It's Alive, Road to Ruin, End of Century. So I have their entire discography, and it's all in chronological order, numbered. So I can easily get to where I want. If I already have, a particular era or an album in mind, quickly get to that, and it's in chronological order, so it triggers my brain. It reminds me of what order the albums are. Then I'm like, oh yeah, I want to listen to the album after Too Tough to Die, I can't remember what that is. What album is that? Oh yeah, it's Animal Boy. So I'll listen to Animal Boy. So that works out really well. But we're just talking about the browsing. That's not so much things that, really stand out features on this player. I'm just talking about how I browse. It does have an interesting digital analog converter. So with the DAC, what I can do is I can actually plug this up to my computer via USB, put my headphones into this, and I can run music from my computer through this. It actually uses the built-in digital analog converter to do that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And also we can go here to turn on the Bluetooth receiver and do that kind of thing. And if we go into settings, go into device settings, actually no, go into sound settings, there we go. So under sound settings, this is where we have those other things like the equalizer. We can go into there and we can change things on the equalizer. We can actually go in here and this TSEHX, it says it up-reses, I guess, essentially, MP3s and 44.1 kilohertz audio to be basically on the same playing field as high-resolution audio. I messed with it for a little bit. It was okay, but for me, it wasn't enough to knock my socks off. It wasn't that huge of a improvement. DC phase linearizer says it makes low frequency response more like an analog amplifier. My headphones or my speakers or none of that crap in the car really has that much of a low end anyway, so I didn't take much advantage on that. And we can go here and we can actually change different faux sound options like that, surround options. There's a normalizer where we can turn that on where it basically squashes all the dynamic range. I leave that off. And with the A55 has this new vinyl processor. And it says it makes it warm and rich, just like vinyl. I'm not really sure about that. I kind of messed with it for a little bit. Again, it didn't really knock my socks off. So to save battery life, I just turn all this garbage off. I like the equalizer, so I use the equalizer here and there depending on where I'm at. But everything else I just kind of leave off. And as far as clear audio goes, it says it applies advanced digital signal processing in a single-step operation. I turned that on and I wasn't impressed whatsoever. But most of the stuff I listen to is MP3s at 160 or 256 kilobits. And so, I don't know, it could just be my audio just doesn't have enough information to take advantage of that. Again, I wasn't too impressed. But now here's something that you guys will find interesting. So if I go to settings, and I go to settings, and I go to unit information, look here. It shows that we have 28,562 songs on here. And free total SD space, so we have 238 gigs of space, and I have 69 gigabytes free. I thought it was really interesting. So for those who are wondering, yes, in fact, you can break the 20,000 song limit. I have 28,500 songs on this device, and as far as I can see, they're all represented because, there's a lot of times I'll be driving. I want to grab some deep cuts on my device, and I've never had any problem whatsoever trying to find them. So yeah, I don't have any problem at all trying to find stuff, and it does in fact show here that we're at 28,562 tracks. So we've definitely blown past that 20,000 limit that's imposed by Sony in the instruction manual. So that's positive. You can also listen to FM radio on here. I have it turned off, obviously. But that's basically as far as the features go that I thought was interesting that this gave over the iPod. I mean, most notably, the killer feature on the Sony Walkman is the fact that we have expandable memory. So I can just drop an SD card in here and I'm good to go. So I definitely went and got a 256 gig SD card, and that allowed me to, really go. Now, another thing here that I'll discuss is this thing allows you to play high resolution audio. So if we navigate over here to this, we have Adam Agee and John Sousa with this particular track. It wasn't anything that really blew my socks off, but what I thought was interesting is if we go here to detailed song information and scroll into the bottom. So this is in DSD codec. I'd never heard of DSD codec, so I was like, I need to figure this out. It's 1-bit bit depth. So a CD is 16-bit and Blu-ray is 24-bit. This is 1-bit. And a sample rate of 2.8224 megahertz. That's a huge sample rate because compact disc is 44.1 kilohertz. This is 2.8224 megahertz with a bit rate of 5644 kilobits per second. This is huge audio. And I was looking, this one particular track was like 60-some megabytes or something. I mean, it was enormous for just one track, I think. Or maybe it was like 100 and some. I don't remember. It was huge, whatever it was. So I was really blown away by the enormous size of this. And it sounded decent, but again, it wasn't anything that really blew my socks off. So I started looking up to see if I could find other DSDs, and I found that Michael Jackson's Thriller is on DSD, and so I was wanting to purchase that and take a listen to that, but I never got around to it. But yeah, this is just my meager selection of high-resolution audio. As you can see, it's just one page. That's it. But hey, we have some Starflyer in here, so that's cool. But yeah, it is what it is. Now, if we could talk about cons for just a moment. Probably my biggest disappointment with this is battery life. When I first got this, I was just playing it Bluetooth. I saw the battery last me like a day and a half or 2 days on Bluetooth. It was abysmal. So I turned Bluetooth off. I was like, screw this. We're just doing old analog headphones from now on. So I went back to the old headphones, and I noticed I was able to get about 10 days of use out of it before it was just gasping for breath and had to absolutely be charging him. Which is a far cry from my iPod Classic. My iPod Classic, shoot, I could go for like 6 weeks on one charge before I had to charge it up. So it definitely doesn't have the battery capability as an iPod Classic, and that's kind of astonishing to me because I assumed there's that much better battery life than an iPod Classic because that has a hard drive that has to spin up every single time you place them. It doesn't have a hard drive. There's no moving parts at all in this thing. So you think that this thing would actually last longer. So we have all the audio processing on, and you have Bluetooth on, and you have all that other stuff on. It sucks the battery dry. So I turned all that garbage off. Now, I know Sony has some other Walkmans on the market that have an Android operating system on them, and I would personally caution against those if battery life is something that you're into, because essentially those things are basically phones without a phone. From all the reviews that I've read and seen about, they practically require daily charging. And when it comes to an MP3 device, I don't want to do daily charging. I want to get as far away from daily charging as possible. Weekly charging, maybe. I kind of liked with my iPod Classic, I was basically monthly charging. But to go with an Android Sony Walkman device where you're practically having to charge every single day, if it's down to that, I'll just use my stupid phone. And another con that I will mention is the fact that, like I said in the unboxing video, this is only compatible with a proprietary charging cable. I would have much have preferred a micro USB or USB-C or, even standard USB. But instead they went with this proprietary weird Sony port, because now you have to go and buy proprietary charging cables if you want to have multiple cables. And you can't just walk into Walmart or Best Buy and buy one of these. You practically have to order it off Amazon, so that's kind of a con. Another con, I was hoping that like the DSCE would really just, blow me away and enrich all this low bitrate MP3s that I made back in, the turn of the millennium. Because in 2002, I went MP3'd all my CDs at that point, but it was all at 160 kilobits. And so listening to it now, it kind of leaves a little to be desired. I should just go back and re-encode all those CDs, but I'm just too lazy, so I just kind of let it ride. But I was hoping the DSCE would really lift that up and elevate it, but I didn't really notice that much of an improvement, to be honest. But honestly, that's really the only con I can think of is the battery life is garbage if you're using Bluetooth. And the DSCE didn't necessarily blow my socks off like I was hoping it would. Now, so that's the player. That's a review on the player itself. The main point I wanted to drive home with this is the fact that, yes, in fact, you can blow past the 20,000 track limit that Sony set. That's nonsense. I have almost 30,000 songs on this device, and it works fine. I've been able to find every track I want to find, so that's fine. So now that we've reviewed the device, let's review the software and take a look and see at some limitations, pros and cons of the software that comes with this and that kind of thing. So for that, we'll go ahead and jump into the Office and take a look at the software. So the Walkman comes bundled with Music Center for PC. And as you can see looking here, it's basically just like iTunes, is a little bit different. Most notably, the biggest complaint I can make is every freaking single time I start this up, it has to analyze all of the classical music tracks that are on here. I don't understand, so I just hit stop. But yeah, every single time it has to analyze. And the analyzation part, that's basically so it can save that to playlist. So on the Walkman device itself, there's playlists to where you can go in there and you can choose. So yeah, I can go in here and I can click on this, and then it'll give me a list of playlists that I can scroll through. And basically it shows me different like moods and that kind of thing, so I can go through and look at different things, and I can hit play. So it analyzes the tracks so it can come up with a better understanding of what would work out better for each one of these moods or whatever. But yeah, so every single time I start up Music Center, it has to reanalyze all of the classic music like, you know, Beethoven and Mozart and all that other stuff. So as we can see here, we have art here that I basically painstakingly gone through and got all this art for all these albums. So I guess one positive thing is I can turn on DSE HX on the computer, and it actually works out pretty decent on the computer, so I don't have any problem on the computer. It's just on the device it's kind of... So yeah, we can sit here and we can play an album. It immediately starts playing an album there. And so I can go over here and I can if I change this to this view and do this, then it actually gives me a list of the tracks that are on here, and I can, you know, choose different tracks and that kind of thing. So here's my biggest gripe. So let's see. So I have all these Tooth and Nail box sets, and they all have the exact same artwork. So I was like, well, I'll just click on all these and go to that, and oh wait, I can't go to properties. Okay, well then we'll see if we can highlight multiple albums. Go down, so now we have all these covered up, and we can go to properties there. But I can't go to album artwork. So I can only go to album artwork if I choose the album and go to properties. Then I can go to cover art, and I can change the cover art there. So that was my biggest frustration. Is there was like with this instance right here, I wanted to do all, 150 tracks of the exact same cover art, but I couldn't do that because it wouldn't let me. So I had to do each album individually one by one. So there's that issue. And then there's also the issue of AC/DC's Black Ice came out with 4 different covers. So on iTunes, I did every 4th song a different color. So like 1 was yellow, 2 was silver, 3 was red, 4 was blue, and then 5 was yellow, 6 was silver, and so on and so forth. So I was like, well, I'll just do 1, 4, 8, 12. So I'll go to that, properties. So go that, properties. Oh, wait, I can change the artwork. I can only change the artwork if I go to the album and right click on the album and go to properties. Then I can change the artwork. So unfortunately, with albums that have multiple cover arts, like this AC/DC, or like Demon Hunter, where the triptych had 4 different cover arts, or other things like that, you can't do that. You can't set it up to have multiple cover art as it's going through the album, and each track is a different artwork. Can't do that. Each track has to be the same artwork. So that was a big bummer. And there was like one instance where I wanted to change the genre of multiple albums. Oh, I can't do that. So then I had to go to song view. So we'll go to song view, highlight all those, go to properties. And then at that point, then I could change the genre. So I was able to do that. But I don't know, the software is a little clunky, a little irksome. Now, if I'm working with artists, I'm doing stuff with artists, say for instance, I'm working with artists and then I want to do something as far as the entire artist. Unfortunately, I can't change the genre for the entire artist. Some artists, they just have a standard genre. It'd be nice if I could just right click on that and go to properties and change it. Unfortunately, I can't. I can only change the artist photo or whatever. So that was a no-go. And then I found out, well, I can go to songs and I can do that. But then, I don't know, it's this big thing. And look at this. It's just a wall of tracks. So definitely the software is not as forgiving as iTunes is, unfortunately. Now, it's not to say that software is bad. This is a de facto media center for my computer. Any sort of albums I listen to in MP3 format on my computer are now with Media Center. So every time I pull up the computer, I automatically open up Media Center. I reduce it down to the bottom. It's always there. I'm always going to be using it. So I don't know. Initially when I brought up the software, like I opened up the software, there's no albums in here. I went to edit. I went to tools. I went to settings. And for some dumb reason, I set it to automatically import albums. And that was the biggest, stupidest thing ever. So for those of you who are thinking about buying this and you want to use Media Center to sync your device, do not check that if you already have an iTunes library. That was stupid. So what I did was I checked this thing and I told it to sync my music folder. And so what it did was it automatically drug in all my music from iTunes into this. And a lot of the stuff, the tags didn't match up to what Music Center wanted the tags to be. So then it started just re-tagging all the tracks by itself. So since it re-tagged all the tracks by itself, now all the tracks are completely re-tagged. So I went back to iTunes, and now it's all screwed up in iTunes. So I basically had to scrap the whole thing, go back to an older iteration of my library, and manually re-import all the tracks into Music Center. So if you're buying this, I implore you to not do the automatically add folder. It's a bad idea. Now another con that I'll have for this software was with iTunes, it had the manage feature. So say for instance, I download an album off Bandcamp, and so it's in my Firefox downloads. So then I can just drag that folder from Firefox downloads into iTunes, and it makes a copy and automatically puts it into the iTunes backup folder. Unfortunately, Music Center doesn't have that option. So what I have to do is I have to download it from Bandcamp, and drag the folder from Bandcamp into my iTunes folder, or I guess now my Media Center folder, whatever, and then drag it from the Media Center folder into Media Center. Now, I could understand that the automatically sync option would come in handy in that instance, because if you have your Firefox download set up to automatically download to your Media Center folder, then it automatically drop into the Media Center. But it seems like it'd be a bigger headache to do it that way, so I didn't do it that way. But yeah, those are my main concerns. Okay, and another con was it would have been nice if I could have just went Control A to select all albums, right click, and go to, I can acquire unknown properties. And unknown properties is basically song names and that kind of thing. It'd been nice if, like iTunes, I could have checked a thing to download artwork. Unfortunately, that's not an option. If you want to download artwork, you have to individually go through album by album by album, right-click the album, go to Properties, go to Cover Art, and then choose Acquire Cover Art, and it'll download the cover art that way. It's the most cumbersome thing ever. It would have been nice if I could have just done Control A to select all albums, and right-click and choose Download Artwork. Done. Unfortunately, it didn't give me that option, so I couldn't have done that, so it was this big mess. It took like a week and a half just to get all the artwork, make sure all the genres were correctly labeled, make sure all the albums were correctly labeled. That was the biggest headache ever. So I know a lot of people were talking smack about this on the internet, on Amazon and some other things, because they were talking about how it's the browsing is so behind, it's so garbage. Well, that's because you didn't set up your library. Now, once you import your tracks, you have to make sure that all the keys and all the tags and everything like that is all correct. And once it's all correct, then the browsing on the device is smooth as butter. I took 10 days, almost 2 weeks, to go through everything in my library, and now the device is smooth as butter. As you can see here, we have all the artwork, we have all the correct genres, we have all the correct albums, and look at all this. It just looks beautiful, looks great, no problem at all. But in order to do that, I had to go and make forth the effort to make sure it was all done correctly. And so it's all done correctly now, and so we can browse and all looks good. So at any rate, my biggest complaint with the entire package is definitely Music Center. Music Center was my biggest complaint. It had quirks, and you had to get past those quirks. You had to figure out how to work around those quirks. But once you work around those quirks, it's serviceable, but the software could have been better, is all. So I hope you enjoyed the review. I guess I'll just wrap it up with that. I just wanted to talk about the device a little bit, some of the features, the battery, how the features interact with the battery, and the software. The software definitely needs more refinement. I mean, it works for what it is, but it could be better. It's definitely no iTunes, that's for sure. But I guess that's all. So thanks for watching and peace out.